In this episode, we'll be covering agriculture mechanics, different teaching methods, and some fun stories. Hello and welcome to Talk Ag to Me. This is Talk Ag to Me, the podcast dedicated to improving ag literacy around the globe, and I'm your host, Brendan Black. This is our first official episode back after our long hiatus, so I hope you're all excited for it. In this episode, I had the opportunity to be on the podcast of actually one of my teachers from Fresno State, Chris Mckenna, and we decided to do a guest exchange, so we actually use his episode for my show as well. So him and his co-host, actually my current ag mechanics professor, John Williams, both were on my show. And I was on theirs. Again, this is the same episode from their show. So if you listen to my episode on their show, this is the exact same conversation. But we had a great talk about agriculture mechanics, different teaching methods, and they told some fun stories about their experiences in teaching agriculture. So it was really fun. Unfortunately, we don't have a video to go along with this episode, and I haven't quite gotten down the animation thing yet. So enjoy some cover art while we go through this episode. But I hope you all enjoy. And don't forget to go check out their podcast, Safety Glasses Required. I'll link it down in the description so you can go check it out. And if you haven't already, go and check out my episode on their end. It'll be the same thing as this one, but just so you have given them both the attention that they so very much deserve. So thank you once again. I hope to catch you in the next one, and enjoy the episode.
This is going to lead it. I have a joke. So John Williams here, Chris, and then we have a special guest, Brendan Black.
How's it going?
Yeah. So I'm going to start us off with a joke. Okay? Or I don't know if it's a joke, but kind of dad humor. But it says benefits of a good vocabulary. So I recently called an old engineering buddy of mine and asked what he was working on these days. He replied that he was working on an aquathermal treatment of ceramics, aluminum, and steel under a constrained environment. And so the guy says, I was impressed until upon further inquiry, I learned that he was just washing dishes with hot water under his wife's supervision. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, okay.
It's kind of a terrible dad joke, but
I thought it was funny. You laughed. Okay.
Am I laughing at it or am I laughing at you?
I don't know.
Yeah, let's see.
Either way, you got to laugh.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah. So.
Reminds me of Mr. Medeiros back at Tulare. He used to, when he was teaching us about resume building and stuff, teaching you like trying to talk yourself up, use fancy words for small jobs. And so he told us when he was in college, he was a social chemist when he was a bartender.
Don't tell me he taught you the word magnanimous too.
He did actually.
Medeiros and magnanimous.
He worked at McClintock's.
Did he?
Yeah, he was a bartender though, but he was a bartender.
Yeah.
And so anytime you talk about San Luis Obispo, it's about Cal Poly and McClintock's. That's the only thing you'll ever hear from him.
Yeah. I used fancy words when I was working out in the orchard here on my resume. I said I was involved in weed abatement. Yeah. I just sprayed weeds.
It's not a fancy word.
It sounds fancy.
Yeah. Yeah, I think when I put, because I used to help out my sister's horse ranch, I was an equine caretaker when I just cleaned pens.
Yeah.
So.
I guess not fancy, but it sounds,
Yeah.
It sounds more prestigious than what it is.
Well, it's funny. You talk to certain people in society and you say, I spray weeds, and they, chemicals, whatever. But you say, I work in weed abatement.
Right.
What's that entail?
We remove
manage
weeds
an
from.
orchard,
Yeah.
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 So, yeah, magnanimous.
Magnanimous.
Yeah. Oh man, so Brendan, now I know. I was going to ask you where you're from, but you're from Tulare.
I am. Yep. I was first introduced to Mr. Mckenna here back my freshman year of high school, right before he left us.
You sound a little sad.
That did sound a little sad, didn't it?
My brother had him as a teacher. I grew up hearing all these great stories. I never got to experience it until I came to Fresno State. So
it came full circle.
It came full circle. It kind of worked out. But yeah, born and raised in Tulare. I was raised, all around cows my whole life. So I'm more of an animal science kid. But my dad and my brother are big mechanics guys. So I always grew up around the mechanics side of things too. So I didn't quite have the skill level that they did. I was always more on the living side of things. But I've always been around ag. So
So like dairy or
Mostly dairy and beef, but I've done a little bit of both.
So you are an ag ed major.
I am.
To be a teacher.
That's the plan.
And I take your animal science emphasis.
That is my emphasis. Yeah.
What year are you in?
I technically should be in my last year. I was supposed to graduate next semester, but I started my minor kind of late, so it's going to be next fall now. But yeah, I'm in my last little spurt here.
A minor in
mass communication journalism.
Okay.
Yep. Just in case I wanted to do some more of the podcast stuff on the side, I can have that background for it. Get some more practice.
So I don't think we've mentioned it though yet, but Brendan does do a podcast as well, and the title of that podcast is
Talk Ag to Me. Yep. I've been doing it for 3.5 years now, and it's all dedicated to ag education. A little bit different than what you guys do here, though, and it's not so much focused on the classroom setting as it is on having conversations with people that don't come from ag backgrounds and teaching them about what they're missing out on in the ag industry.
So he's got way more experience. That's what that means, Johnny, than we do.
So give you a little plug. You're on Spotify and.
I am, yeah. Anywhere you can find podcasts: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, Overcast, all those. So.
Okay, so you bring up a good point, or a good topic that we really get to lead us off on, is ag literacy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so how many of your listeners have, I don't know if any, but have reached out and say, hey, I didn't know about this, and this is great, and things like that. So do you have any interaction with any of your listeners and things like that as far as outside of ag people?
I was hoping to have a little bit more by now, but I have gotten a surprising amount of people reach out and say, hey, I didn't know this is really interesting. Of all things, not even because of the podcast, it was because I started a TikTok for the podcast that I was using to promote episodes, and in one of those promotions, I was talking about the difference between like a bull and a cow and a steer and a heifer and all that kind of stuff, and somehow it blew up. I mean, it got like I think 1.8 million views or something like that, completely out of nowhere.
Told you he's big time.
and since then I haven't gotten like any views on any of my other videos, but no, I mean, I had like hundreds of comments within a couple of days of people asking questions, of people wanting me to do more videos on different stuff. So and it's all like, I was expecting like the dumb kind of questions you get sometimes where people are just trying to poke fun at you, but they're like really like genuine questions, like how does this work? I've always been curious about this. What like I have some friends who are involved in ag, but I've always been scared to ask them. You seem very approachable. How do I go about this? Like, very in-depth like questions about the industry that I wasn't even aware people had an understanding of. And then on the podcast side of things, I haven't had people so much engage from like the audience perspective, but from guest perspective, I've had actually guests recommend other guests to me that have come on and they've asked me questions. And that's always kind of my policy is like, if you have a question, let's come on the show and talk about it. That way I can explain it to you in more depth than just like a comment can get you. But I have had some people come on that have had like some very kind of like out of left field questions I wasn't expecting from somebody who doesn't have that kind of background. And like, it's more than just, hey, can we trust GMOs, and is organic really that that good for you, or stuff like that. There's that too, but it's like, what are the deeper, what's the deeper implications of like vertical farming, and like what kind of technology can we see over the next few years, and like stuff that I'm like, I didn't even know you guys knew that was a thing. I'm kind of impressed.
Yeah, maybe we have a misconception of what most people view ag as, because I would think like, yeah, you're just going to ask the GMOs and, like antibiotics. And,
right.
It's pretty traditional type questions, or organic versus traditional farming type stuff.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
In my experience, that was kind of like the big eye-opener for me when I switched from, because I used to interview just producers, growers from like the Tulare area. I actually got some people from Texas that came up and talked to me about like their, they do like a dairy consulting company, so they talked to me a little bit about that. I was trying to cover industries that aren't talked about as much in the general ag conversations, like consulting and like construction, like that kind of stuff. And in my experience from switching over to the non-ag side of things, people are not only a lot more knowledgeable in ag than I thought they were, but they're a lot more curious about it too. Like, I was fully expecting like nobody to listen to it. People were just going to be, very against it. They were going to be like, why are you talking about this? Like, I'm like almost like they're going to trust Facebook more than more than the farmer kind of situation. And I was really surprised. A lot of them came on there like, hey, I have a lot of questions about this. Could you, would you mind talking to me about it? And like, I would talk to them for a while, and they were like, thanks for educating me. I've been looking for this information. I can't find it. Everywhere I go, they tell me this. I know it's not true. Like, people are surprisingly eager to learn about ag. They just don't necessarily have the best platforms to learn it from.
Yeah, you think about society as a whole, and when it's funny because you said you were minoring in MCJ,
Mm-hmm.
and I took at one point during my tenure as an undergrad, I was an AgCom major for a little bit, and I took an MCJ class, and at that time it was before, I think Facebook had just barely started, and where you had to be a college student to join, and MySpace was out there, but it wasn't none of it really took off yet. But at that time, they said like 75% of Americans got their news information from Saturday Night Live.
Wow.
That's a
And now
Now it's Facebook.
Yeah.
now it's
Or
Facebook
social media.
and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So, we always talk about in Ag Ed and how do we reach out and stuff. And when Facebook and all that stuff was really kind of taking off when we first became teachers, they're like, oh, you guys need to have a chapter page and all that. Like, no, I'm not going to open that up.
That was a can of worms that you did not want to touch.
Right?
You were like, no, we did not. Yeah.
But now it's almost to a point. I don't have social media. I get a lot of my social media stuff from Chris. Because Chris always forgets I don't have social media. He says, hey, did you see this? I'm like, no. But it can be a very powerful tool in a sense of bridging that gap in ag literacy and where we have issues of people in society not understanding things. And we look at example. Do you know about Prop 12?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so we have a call out right now, a statewide, like, hey, we need to email CDFA because we need to figure out a way so that it doesn't end or really make showing animals, it could potentially cause it to kill that whole aspect.
Or at least
our
dwindle
program.
it down.
Mm-hmm.
So it's having a good understanding, because we get regulations and laws that come in, and the wording in those on our ballots tend to be very biased, and so people who don't understand, I don't, sows can't be in a small place, so yeah, I'm going to vote yes on making sure that these cows have these sows have the space that they need, and they just don't understand that the purpose of like a farrow and crate and things like that is to protect the piglets, not necessarily, it's all about animal husbandry and taking care of our animals. And so we do have an big issue with ag literacy, and I'm glad people are reaching out and saying, hey, thanks for educating me and things like that. I think that's very important. That our last episode we talked about open-mindedness in just ag teaching, but in general I think people have we have an issue of closed-mindedness amongst society.
Was getting like a tunnel vision and really like not seeing what people's questions really are.
Right.
Like Brennan's getting. That's I don't know, I'm surprised that there are questions like that from non-ag people. I really am.
I was too. Like, now I'm to the point where I almost like not
expect it.
expect it, but yeah, I almost like go into every conversation with like the idea of like, okay, I'm gonna at least assume that they know something,
right? Because
when I first started, I'm gonna admit I came off a little condescending. The first couple episodes, I had people on, and I was like, "All right, we're gonna play a little game. What's the difference between accountable?" Just like stupid questions like that, because I wanted to see where their knowledge was at before I started getting into a conversation about something heavy. And like they were good sports about it, and they're actually the first couple guests are still good friends of mine that I brought back a couple weeks ago. But they were very like. They were so much higher than I expected them to be that I like just stopped doing that after a few episodes. I was like, that it seems like kind of a not a very nice way to approach having these conversations. I can't keep asking people, if they know what that chocolate milk doesn't come from brown cows, because then they kind of look at me like I'm stupid. Like, what do you mean? And I'm like, I don't think you realize there's a lot of people who don't know that.
Yeah.
And no, I've been very, very caught off guard. But to your point about Prop 12, another thing that I've noticed when it comes to having those conversations with people is that if you apply the kind of practical knowledge, which you guys should know plenty about, that your entire class is based off practical knowledge, it helps people kind of resonate with the information a lot more. So like in the same way that, you guys teach about, skills that you can apply to your everyday life, whether it be, wiring for circuitry, or whether it be, fixing a sprinkler, or, like that kind of stuff, whenever I talk to people about like Prop 12 or some of this legislation, if I say, hey, you just voted on something that's going to make sure we don't have bacon for who knows how long, and the bacon we do have is going to be through the roof. And they're like, oh, well, why? And I explain, okay, well, this is what this actually means. This means that states aren't going to do business with us because of this. I go through all the logistics of it, and they're like, that makes so much more sense. I wish they would have said that on the thing when we voted on it. I'm like, that's the problem. But no, it's something about like having, if you just talk to them like, like they're people, like not like how I was doing it at the beginning.
So what he's saying is he was an asshole. He's gonna beat that out. He's writing it down.
But no, I mean, like as soon as you apply the part of it that matters to them, then they're like, oh, well, if I would have known that, I wouldn't have voted on it.
We tend to have I think in agriculture we tend to have a sense of arrogance, especially when we think, oh, we feed the world, and then they, farmers do. But I think the one thing that agriculture has struggled with is reaching out to those places that don't see ag every day. We don't. If you're living in the center of Los Angeles or in San Francisco and stuff like that, you got to go out a ways to be able to see that stuff. And so we in ag and ag ed, to be honest, and need to be a little bit better as far as being in that area. And you go back in history, San Francisco never had an ag program. None of their high schools have ever had an ag program. Some of like Oakland and Richmond and some of those have had ag programs in the past. But, look in the city of Fresno, not one school in Fresno Unified, well,
Duncan.
Sunnyside just started, but for the longest time did not have an ag program in the last 5 years. We had Duncan Pauley there for a while, but the largest school district in the number one ag county in the state doesn't have an ag program. I mean, you go, LA is back and forth, and prior to and just before your time, but Prop 13, which protects our property taxes. Prior to that, LA Unified had the number one CTE program in the state and had the most ag programs in the state.
Wow.
Okay, but you also got to think back, and this was early 80s, the population shift from then to there. Because you go back 1950, do you know what the number one ag county in the country was?
Orange County, maybe? No?
Yeah.
That was before Disneyland. Really?
Yeah.
Huh. Wow.
And Orange County had a lot of ag. And
Yeah.
a
lot of dairies.
A lot of dairies, east part of that. Orange County gets the name because of the orange groves. And
Right.
Disneyland was originally built on 40 acres of an orange orchard and stuff like that. And so population shift, and that's what we're seeing here in the Central Valley. It's population shift. We got a lot of people moving here because the cost of living is down. But we're running into this literacy issue, and we got to figure out as an industry, how do we combat that? How do we educate? And I think that some of the things that you're doing is really good as far as that aspect of it.
Well, I think it's exactly, especially hitting like social media stuff and, doing like TikToks and whatnot. Like that's definitely like a younger generation of people, Not to say that older people can't be on TikTok, but,
I definitely think
it's
you guys
more of a
need to-
younger generation thing.
Yeah, I don't
and
even really know what TikTok is.
I think you guys
Just
definitely need
videos.
to TikTok. That'd be entertaining.
I do have one actually.
Do
but
you?
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. No, but I mean, like, I think that's one of the biggest things that I've noticed. Because when I started my podcast, one of the biggest reasons I started it was because that was around the time that I had just decided I wanted to be an ag teacher, and I wanted to learn more about the career. And I didn't I talked to my own ag teachers about it, obviously, but ag teachers are always going to sell you more on their job. They're like, oh yeah, because we need more ag teachers. You should be an ag teacher. I wanted to get some more, like other perspectives on it, and so I was looking for podcasts about ag education. I couldn't find any. I mean, maybe there were some back then, but I mean, the only podcasts I could find were The Future of Ag, which I'm not sure if you guys have heard of that. It's Tim Heydrich, I think is his name. Great guy. I've talked to him, a few times. He is one of the largest ag podcasts there is. And then like some other like ag like news report type podcasts, but that was it. It was all like industry stuff and markets, and like that was all they were talking about. So I was like, you know what? If nobody else is going to do it, then I'll start my own. And at this time I knew like next to nothing about ag ed, so I had to basically learn from scratch, and I had a lot of mishaps, but no, I once I kind of got my feet going and I kind of started getting into the role of doing the episodes, after a couple of years, I started noticing little ag ed podcasts pop up everywhere. I mean, now there's tons of them, which is awesome. I think that's exactly what needs to happen. But as I'm talking to them, I'm starting to realize that they're going through the same steps that I went through, where they're like starting talking to just growers, and they're like, well, maybe this isn't quite the direction we need to go to. Maybe we should try reaching out to some other people. And like they're going like the high school route. They're talking to students, and then they're going to like, you know, the just out of college route. Like they're trying all these different avenues, and I'm kind of laughing. So I'm like, you know, if we would all just, you know, get together for 5 seconds and be like, hey, been there, done that, can we try something else? So we might be able to tackle a lot more ground and cover a lot more, you know, people who need to hear it. I mean, I think the podcasts that don't directly address the people who aren't in ag are great. You know, I think that we definitely need them, but there's got to be somebody having those conversations too. You know, we basically just need a conversation on every level about it if we're going to get it tackled at all.
So do you listen to our podcast?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
I listened to a few episodes last night. I like to prep before every interview, but
So you barely started listening to it last night?
yes.
So college student.
But I listened to a couple episodes, and it's very like I said, everyone's gonna have a different take on it, but just having the conversations in general are, you know, that's what's gonna get stuff moving.
So what do you think of ours?
I like it. It's very like, I like podcasts that can do like the educational thing and still be like casual and fun and make jokes and stuff. That's something that my podcast struggles with. I'm a little too like formalized. Like we have jokes when we kind of crack up and stuff, but like it mostly relies on my guests to bring the comedy. I'm just there to educate. So
just to let you know, when we started this, our idea was like, me and him would just sit and talk for like 2 hours in my office here, and we're like, we should record this. Like, it's kind of funny. And he's like, nobody would listen to this. I'm like, I think people would listen.
Yeah.
Because it's just kind of like shop talk and
Yeah.
like just, you know, just shooting the breeze.
You'll notice when you become an ag teacher and you go to events, ag teacher, like summer conference, region meeting and stuff like that, and you get around other, you know, teachers and so forth, you like time will disappear at times.
yeah.
That's, you know, biggest thing is after meetings and stuff like that, summer conference, and then, you know, you go to an establishment and have a couple sodas and things like that, and then next thing you know, you're like, oh crap, it's 2 a.m. I got a meeting at 8 tomorrow.
You still drinking sodas at 2 a.m.?
A lot of sugar. But that's the, you know, CATA, which you'll be a member of, is organization's been around for over 100 years, and the biggest thing on that is professional development, but then the outside stuff, that social element of it, that a lot of organizations struggle with, but CATA has that down pretty well. You know, we value both the meetings and the professional development and the workshops and things like that, but we also value those relationships, and I think that's one of the reasons why our organization has lasted for so long and has been so successful and strong, you know. And so that's the beauty of it. And so when Chris says, and Chris and I have been friends for almost 20 years.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty close to 20 years.
And you know, best man in weddings and things like that. And just, you know, lived together, all kinds of things. So we would, you know, when he came, because I came here part-time and then came full-time, and the year after I was here full-time, we were able to hire Chris, and it was like, you know, I don't know if it was rekindling, but building that bonding again, because working at different places, you know, we would talk, but not as much.
I just handed Johnny a Kleenex because I feel like he might cry right now. He did when I ran for state office for CATA, and he did a speech and he cried.
Wow.
No, he did. Yeah, you did. Yeah,
I almost
There's
did.
proof of
no,
it.
I didn't.
I can see where the shop life
And it
comments
wasn't
come from.
necessarily about what I was saying. It was you stand in front of 700 ag teachers staring at you, and it's very intimidating. And so it's kind of like. And then
So you didn't cry for me?
No.
What? This whole time I'm thinking he cried for me.
I was just super nervous because I don't like.
I'm pretty sure you
I do
cried.
not like
Okay.
public speaking. It freaks me out.
I can see where the shop life comes from now.
So, so we would literally come in the morning, and the coffee maker, which we've cut back on our coffee usage a little bit, but we'd fill that thing up like 2 times a day. and we would just talk and talk and talk, and it was always about what do we do in classes, how do we make this better, and things like that. And so that's the original idea of how we need to have podcasts. So
Yeah, no, I think there's a reason that I like your guys' podcast for what it is, because a big thing that I've been trying to push a lot, especially lately, is bringing the humanity back to ag. I think a lot of ag folks get really focused on pushing the technology and the new methods and the we're trying to save the world and all this kind of stuff, and they forget to teach people that farmers are people too, and people in ag are the same as everyone else. We all go through the same kind of stuff. We have the same relationships. We're all very tight knit as a group, and being able to show that through casual conversation, through some of those close relationships, through stories like that, really shows people that ag is a lot more than just business people who are trying to make money off of land or off of crops or just producing food in general. These are people's lives at stake. They're people who dedicate everything they have to growing food for others and to benefiting the world as a whole. That's why excuse me, that's why I like having a lot more of your guys' type of podcast, which is very, like I said, you can get down to business, but you still have like the humanity part of it too. People think that you're actually people, not just college professors who just like to torture children. So
nobody thinks that, do they? Now I'm thinking. Not once they get to know us, I don't think, for sure.
None of my students are children.
No. No.
Young adults torturing.
So you guys said you started the podcast more as kind of like a platform just to talk and have fun and that kind of stuff. So where did you guys start with the intention of having some educational stuff in there too, or is that kind of a byproduct?
Oh yeah, no, that the education was definitely part of it, and it's geared more towards ag teachers, and I would say kind of shop teachers, but not necessarily just shop teachers, because there's things that we've experienced through our career that like, okay, things that we've struggled with, or, things that have worked well for us. And, so we want people to be able to kind of learn, from some of that stuff.
An emphasis on ag mechanics, but in ag education. So we're not doing a lot of like what we brought some people in from industry and things like that, but it's not necessarily, our goal was to be very open.
Yeah.
And stuff. Well, our definite focus is ag mechanics, teaching ag mechanics, and figuring out a way to help out new teachers. And our biggest thing was, okay, how do we put something together that would reach both the young teachers and the old school teachers?
Yeah, because we're both in the middle of that pack, maybe a little bit more on the upper end of that pack, but we're still in the middle of that pack, I think. Years-wise, But in reality, there's probably less older teachers and more younger teachers, So, but years-wise, we're both in the middle, kind of our careers, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And you guys are in a prime position because you get to watch, young teachers as they kind of reach that first stage of their career. So have you guys let any of that in, like, obviously being able to see that, that transition from college to first year teaching, have you guys used some of that experience as fuel for your episodes or kind of some of the stuff you talk about, or?
Oh yeah, dude. I mean, we're like, what are we gonna talk about today? I'm like, dude, I got something. Like, I had this stuff happen today, and like, we're gonna talk about it. We've done that before, and we've had students that have listened to the podcast, and they're like, you mentioned us. You like, I'm like, yeah, like not by name, but
sure.
like they knew we were talking about them.
Yeah.
Because it really is.
Students that recently graduated, current students come on to as guests. So, we look at it as, you never want to have to recreate the wheel in a lot of things, and so there's so many resources out there, and one thing Chris and I both tell all of our students, and you probably heard because you were just in Chris's class, is that, hey, I'm a resource. So when you become a teacher, and it doesn't matter if it's months away or years away, you got to question whatever. You have you have all my contact information. Let me know. That's what my whole point, purpose of my job is.
Yeah.
We look at it, and it's not just in ag ed, but I mean, we have a lot of students that are ag business, ag comm, plant science, IT, all those things. And I've had students, full circle from all different majors reach out to me afterwards. Hey, we're doing this in my job right now. Can you send me the formulas on spraying just so I can refresh myself on that? Or I have a job interview in this area. How do I calculate or estimating costs and things like that. So it's always, the purpose is young professionals, and it doesn't matter if they go into teaching, but it's I think that's kind of anchored in that, but it's in general things that have to do with machinery, ag mechanics, and then a lot of points on just how to be a teacher and how to.
I think some of why we do the podcast and other things is, when you're an ag teacher at the high school level, you're going and doing competitions, and you're involved and you're seeing all the other ag teachers. But when you come here to Fresno State, you don't have those things. You don't have fair. You don't have competitions every weekend, and so you kind of lose a little bit of touch with the high school teachers, right? And you kind of have this wall that's kind of in between, whether it's a perceived wall, whether it exists or not. There is a difference in, you're not a high school teacher, you're a college teacher, and there is a separation because of that. And I think, between me and Johnny, we want to keep that relationship with them. And so this is kind of one of those ways that we can help keep people involved, and we can see what's going on with them as we interview them, or, just talk about like our experiences. We work with all the young teachers, coming out of Fresno State here. And so we, have that connection with them. And, like you said, we want to help them out. And I feel like that's kind of one of the roles that we can play here at Fresno State is trying to help people out. Not to say that we know everything, but, we, whatever we do know, or whatever we have screwed up, take some of that advice and, and take it for what it's worth and learn from it, and, and be better, because of it.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really valuable role to play. I mean, I know a lot of, at least ag ed majors that, and, other ag majors as well, that are going into their careers and have, not that they have no idea what to expect, but they're not sure how they're going to handle the transition from, school into the real world. And a lot of ag ed teachers are worried about their, their first few years of teaching, not having help, or, their department not giving them a hand or anything like that. So having somebody that they can count on to come back and say, hey, I don't know what I'm doing with this. Would you mind giving me some guidance? Or, do you guys still have this resource? This is really helpful. I want to use this in my class or whatever. That could be huge for a lot of new teachers who are going through some of that anxiety. I also know that there are some people who are considering, like, they want to teach, but they almost are choosing not to because they are worried about some of the classroom stuff that they're not quite sure they're ready for. Like, they know all the ag stuff, they have the information they need, but they're not sure if they're going to be ready to handle students, or if they're going to be ready to handle parents, or if they're going to be ready to not sure ever ready to handle parents, but the meetings and the conferences and all that kind of stuff. And so having somebody who's been through it and who is now on the stage right before they go on for that kind of role, and can talk to them through it before they get there. I think that's huge for a lot of people who are still on the fence about that.
There are two values that we tend to forget because we get our bachelor's degree and we take some of the ag ed classes, but they don't really get you ready for classroom management. And even the credential program doesn't get you ready for classroom management. The classes themselves, what actually gets you ready for classroom management is student teaching. Because being in front of students and working through that, because you're going to fail 100%. Every teacher has failed at that, especially starting off, but it's all about learning and overcoming that. And so I see my failure. What did I do wrong? What can I do better? And there's been some professional development stuff on classroom management stuff. What's his name? He taught us how not to smile.
Oh my gosh, Dean Archer.
Yeah. We were new professionals, and he had a workshop on classroom management. He's, as far as figuring out a way. Because
sometimes students do things, and you really you personally, you want to laugh, right? You're like, that was funny. But I need to be the adult here, and I can't laugh at this right now because I will lose all respect. And so the little trick to do that is to put the tongue on the roof of your mouth, and it's just put pressure up, and you will almost keep a straight face. Like, you almost have to force yourself to really smile. So if you really want to, you can do that, and you can keep a straight face.
Good to know.
I've done that messing with students before. I've been messing around with them and trying not to smile, to try to keep a straight face, I'm pissed off at them. And I've just done that, and it works. It works.
Yeah. Good to know.
Yeah. So classroom management's tough, and everyone's afraid of the students.
Student teaching is kind of one of those things too, where you're afforded the ability to make those mistakes,
Yeah.
and really not have any repercussions, barring something big.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah,
Don't hit a student.
From a master teacher's perspective, is okay. This is how this student teacher failed. Here's my advice on how to do that better. Next situation comes, did he learn from that, or did he make the same mistake?
Right.
If he made the same mistake, okay, we need to work on this.
Then you're not
more.
learning.
But if they, and it's all about that. I mean, your ag teacher, Mr.
Magnanimous.
Yeah.
I taught with him for 7 years, so I know the word really well.
That's his favorite word.
He told me, I was living with Chris when it was his first year teaching, and I was supposed to actually student teach at Tulare, but I ended up getting a job somewhere else. But he told me, your first 5 years are hard. Your first year is tough because you're just treading water, keeping your head above water. Second year's even harder because you're in your second year, but you're taking on more responsibilities, but you don't have your curriculum down. Your third year is the hardest of your first 5 years. And then the reason why is you may have your curriculum set, but now you're overdoing it, trying to do more on the intracurricular stuff, the FFA and things like that, and taking on a lot more responsibilities. And it's challenging. Fourth year gets better because your freshmen that you had are now seniors. It's about your fifth year's the easiest, the best year of your first 5 years. And that's because your freshmen you had are now getting their American degree, and it's full circle. I came into we all come into a program where we replace a teacher. That teacher had his group prior to that's not graduated, and it's like, oh, well, that's not how that person did. It's like, okay, I don't care how that person did. This is how I'm going to do it. And so it's overcoming and building those relationships.
Yeah.
But after 4 years, you get a whole brand new set of kids.
I will tell you this, though. The best way to overcome any classroom management issues is building rapport and relationships with students. Okay, forget the curriculum side of things. Forget whatever, and curriculum's important. Don't get me wrong. But if you can't build those relationships with students, you will not get them to learn the curriculum you're trying to teach. They will just be a pain in the butt.
You essentially want to get the kids to where they would jump off a bridge because you told them to.
I don't want any student to jump off.
No, but I mean, like that's essentially like the kind of, like you want them to be like, all right, like I'm gonna listen and follow, and because they respect you.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Some of the best advice I got for classroom management was from Kevin Coolwine. And he told me when I was student teaching, he said, nip the small stuff in the butt and the big stuff will handle itself. He's like, when you first start a class, if somebody does something small that you would normally say, I don't really care, I'm going to let that go, hammer them on it. Because when you hammer them on those things, right at the beginning, the kids go, oh, okay, don't mess around. And then and it does. And that was some of the best advice that I ever got.
I hated stools in my engine shop. Two reasons. One, they sneak over the welding shop and steal them from there. And I just, this is my engine shop. I don't want stools. It's lazy. We're going to be on our feet. So it was like the second week, and I forgot what year it was. It was like 2014 or whatever. And second week, I start seeing the stools. The third week, I start seeing the stools. I'm going to end this. So I walk in one day in the shop. We're out there working, and one student sitting in the stool and a couple others. And I was like, stand up. And he's like, what? Stand up. And so he stood up. I grabbed the stool and I threw it across the shop. So I don't want any more stools in here. Like really angry, pissed off, trying to not laugh about it, whatever. Didn't have a single stool anymore that semester.
Wow.
Violence is not the issue.
Not
I think we need to learn from that. Throwing a stool across the room?
That was making an example.
So 2 lessons from John Williams. The curriculum doesn't matter, and always throw stools.
That's the doctor for you.
No, that's awesome. But no, my audience will hopefully at this point will remember the name Kevin Coolwine forever, because he was my first interview and he was by far my most popular episode. And to this day, he was the biggest supporter of this podcast by a long shot. So all of the stuff that he instilled in me has by proxy translated into the podcast in a lot of ways. So people will definitely hear that and be like, oh, that sounds familiar.
Yeah.
But no, it's something that I've always been kind of curious about. This is, I know where I stand on this, but I've always been curious on an ag teacher's perspective. With other industries, we always encourage people getting internships and going off and trying it before they graduate and going into that career. I help with a lot of like FFA chapters. I coach a couple teams in Hanford. I still help out Tulari's Exempt team. I still help out with some of the showmanship stuff. Would you guys encourage ag ed students or anyone who's going into any kind of educational industry to get the experience with students before they go into their credential or student teaching?
If they have an opportunity, absolutely. Because all of that is going to help you understand how to deal with people, how to work with them. And like here, like at Fresno State, you do classes on like how to teach, and you do these mock teaching things, but it's different. Yeah. And there's no way, it's no fault of anybody, but like when you are teaching your peers and you're pretending like you are a classroom, it is not the same as an actual classroom. And it's not, you don't have the same, like you get nervous in front of your peers. You know what I mean? When you do presentations, do you get nervous?
Oh, absolutely.
Most everybody does, right? And you might think, oh, how am I going to teach if I can't even go up in front of my peers? But kids, students, even if it's college kids where you guys are adults, it's still different, right? Because you guys, we're not necessarily peers. We're not like, at that level. You are a student, and that's what it is, and I'm the teacher, right? And there's a very distinct difference there. So any experience involved in it is going to be good. And most people that are ag ed, I would say a majority of them, were in an ag ed program when they were in high school. Not everybody. Some people don't have that experience. And I mean, we've had like Melissa, who wasn't, she was involved in 4-H.
Yeah. Some of the best ag teachers, in my mind, were never in FFA or
right.
Ag.
No, it does. It definitely doesn't mean like you don't have to do that. But some people understand those things. But if you don't understand it, you should get involved. So that way you know what you're getting yourself into, and you understand, all those dynamics. And experience is only going to make you better. The more experience you have, the better off you're going to learn.
Aging myself again. When I graduated high schoul, I presented
2001.
2001.
I was a year old.
I presented Green Hand conferences for 3 years, and then presented conferences within other organizations, not just ag, for almost 8 years total. But full-time Green Hand conferences for 2 years, and at that time, we took a semester off of school, so and we did every single Green Hand conference. It's changed. The program's changed now. They hire a bunch of students to present conferences throughout whatever. So that actually helped me because I learned a lot about how to teach. And you think about it, you go to a conference in front of freshman high school kids who are away from school, who are excited to be away from school, thinking they're going to this super fun activity that their ag teacher said, and they get there and they have to do workshops that, quite frankly, are kind of boring, in a sense. And how do you manage that? And it was painful the first couple conferences, and that's where I learned a lot of my building rapport and things like that. Because when I graduated high school, I didn't even know what rapport was. Like, what's that? What are you talking about?
Did you say we're poor?
Rapport.
Oh.
So I mean, that did help me as far as the teaching wise goes. But yeah, getting any type of experiences.
I was able to do a migrant scholars program here, where it was like 4th, 5th, and 6th graders, I believe.
Wow.
And it was during the summer, right before I started student teaching. And I ran out of stuff to do with these kids. And let me tell you, you never want to run out of stuff. You will do it at one time in your career, but you will only do it once, because when you run out, you're like, okay, that's it.
In your mind, you're like, oh, this is a great PowerPoint. This is going to last. I'm going to be able to cover this for 3 days. And like 25 minutes into your first lecture, you're done with all of it.
It's why, Brendan, sometimes in class, you might have recognized that I might have spent 15 minutes on one slide.
Like, oh,
you learn how to BS.
He just likes to hear himself talk.
Why do you think we started the podcast?
I mean, that is like a running joke in the podcast community. All podcasters like to hear their own voice. I mean, they have to, right? But no, and I think with littler kids, it's even more of an issue, because that's a whole different level of like, you have to keep their attention the entire time, or else they're just going to wander off. You're not going to be able to keep them. But because I've worked with some littler kids in that regard too. Over at the International Agri Center, we have the Ag Ventures department. I helped out with them for a year or couple years. We did like some educational videos for little kids. We did like some tours and stuff like that. And you know, I've been doing little ag lessons with my girlfriend's little siblings because they're not ag people. You know, they're very new to the ag world. I've been kind of introducing them, but like I do like little lesson plans. We do like little PowerPoints on like intro to animal science. We'll talk about, you know, the main species of livestock and all that kind of stuff. And they're like 12, 10, 8, like, you know, little kids, and they're like all into it. Like now, like every time they see, you know, if they're driving by a dairy, they see a cow, like that's a Holstein. I'm like, yeah, good job, you know, like you got it, great, you know. But like trying to keep their, like every 5 seconds they're like wanting to like, you know, talk amongst each other. I'm like, guys, you know, gotta get through this. I only have another hour before I have to go to work, so we have to get through this lesson. And you know, it's like the level you're teaching and what you're teaching is all gonna, you know, vary on what level of you know, commitment you have to have to each type of lesson plan, or like how much preparation you go into it with, or how much BSing you have to do to get through a lesson or anything like that.
Yeah. My son, when he was, I think 4, I took him to the farm show, and we're in the Kubota booth.
I remember this.
And my son's walking around as 4 years old, telling my mom, because she met us over there, what the types of tractors were. You know, oh, that's a backhoe. That's this, whatever.
That's a front loader.
The service manager or the sales manager or whatever for Kubota was just listening. He's like, I don't even have salesmen that know all this. He went in and got John like the most expensive tractor and walked out and said, hey, here you go. You know, you're doing good. And my son, you know, at that time, was like, oh,
yeah,
you know, got this brand new tractor set. And he's like, just amazed. I was like, yeah, well, that's all the kid does is look at tractors. So,
yeah, that's awesome.
he was, I was doing tractor safety training. He's only 8 now. And some of the students were struggling, you know, the fear of getting on a tractor or whatever. And he walked out, he saw it, he saw the door to the tractor open, he gets in, starts it, and drives away. And they're looking at each other, he's like, yeah, you know, he drives this. I was like, see, an 8-year-old can do it, you can do it. You know? Yeah.
No, that's funny. That was always the difference in my brother and I. My brother was the one that was driving tractors at 8 years old, and I was, you know, to this day still terrified of tractors. And I was always the one that was running out. You know, I would get knocked around by a steer or two and get back up and, you know, grab him and walk him around. And you know, he'll walk a heifer for 5 steps, and as soon as it flops over, he just drops it and he's done. He can't deal with it anymore. So like we're just very, very different people.
You know the nice thing about shop versus animal?
What's that?
The only thing you're going to kill in a shop is yourself.
It's true.
Kill somebody else.
Well, yeah, but you know what I mean. Like you're not going to kill the wood on the tree is already dead.
At 5 a.m. and milk the ironwork. And if I do, there's something wrong with ironwork.
No, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. Now, from a logistics perspective, I understand that there's a lot more common sense in being afraid of animals than being afraid of tractors, but for some reason it just never clicked with me. I can't do machinery, but you can give me a raging bull all day, and I can you know, walk into like it was something I'd, you know.
That's why there's people built to do certain things. And
yeah.
They enjoy certain things and they don't. You know?
Yeah, I mean, my nickname in high school was the Cow Whisperer for a reason. I was meant for this job.
You should be an ag mechanics teacher.
No, Medeiros told me that. We were on a flight back from Indy my last year of nationals, and it was just him and I. I was the only kid in the entire chapter that went for some reason. So he was real happy with me for making him go to Indy. But we were on our way back, and you know, we're in the plane, and he starts off by saying, you know, because he knew I had a you know, deathly fear of heights. It's like, you know, there's only like a few feet of metal between you and like thousands of feet of falling. And I was like, thanks for that. I was getting to sleep, but you know, now I can't.
Are you afraid of heights or are you afraid of fall?
I'm afraid of falling. That's the better. Yeah.
Is it falling or is it landing?
that's a good question.
Falling would be fun. It's the landing that would suck.
See,
You wouldn't feel it though.
Yeah.
Initially, you would. The very first impact, you would definitely
you would pass out before you even hit the ground.
Not necessarily.
Yeah, I don't know. The falling for me makes it kind of like I can't do like droppers and like, you know, like amusement parks. Like something about like the feeling of like not being on the ground just makes me anxious. But
I don't know if it's that. It's probably the lack of control.
Yeah, that's a good thing. That's something too. The same reason I don't like being underwater for too long. Like I feel the need to like get out because I'm not in control of my situation.
Like claustrophobic.
Yeah,
in a way.
yeah. It's like it's weird, but
you'll
no,
but you'll get in a pen with a bull.
Yes.
Okay.
But
Williams doesn't do anything dangerous. We've talked about this on the podcast. Like, he's very like, if it could kill me, I'm not going to do it. Like, he barely wants to drive his truck because of accidents and stuff.
No, that's not
See, that one I understand. I was terrified of driving for the first couple years of my like drivable experience. I think my license I was 18.
I'm not afraid of driving.
I was just making that up.
But there are risks that I will not take.
Yeah.
Like, there's
See, but with animals, like I can predict animal behavior. Like I know they say it's like unpredictable, and like to some degree it is. But like I could watch a bull go back and forth. Like I could tell you exactly what that bull's gonna do. Like I know animal behavior. That's something that I've always grown up knowing. My sister trains horses for a living. That's something that's like it's in my blood. Like you could give me any animal and I could tell you what it's going to do and how to avoid getting hurt. If you give me any kind of machinery, I could not tell you the first thing about how it works or what to do with it.
I hope that you can tell a little bit more.
Well,
after
yeah,
having
now.
My class. Okay. Oh, thank God.
Yes, now I can.
I haven't submitted grades yet, so I.
But speaking generally, like
Yeah.
I can tell you more about an animal than I could about any kind of machinery.
So other than being a cow whisperer, have you ever used a hand drill?
Yes, I've used a lot of like small power animal or
You know that
power tools.
a handheld drill is like the most dangerous tool you can operate.
I believe it, but that's like one of the ones that's one of the ones I feel the most comfortable
You
with.
can do anything.
I think just
There's
large.
nothing for fear there.
I think just large machinery intimidates me. You know what's ironic? The things that scare people the most, I'm not afraid of, and the things that people are the most comfortable with, I'm terrified of. So like I can speak in front of 1,000 people and not break a sweat, but give me like
Until he becomes an ag teacher.
but give me like a any kind of.
I'm gonna call you up one time when I'm doing a committee report.
He's not afraid of spiders, but bunnies. I'm done.
No, but like that, like you could, like I'll be in a room with a snake and I'm like, oh, that's cool. But like like you put me, like you say, hey, you need to go spray some trees with this tractor. I'm like, can I do anything else? Like I don't care if you're paying me. I'd rather go play with the snake. Like that's just my dad to this day cannot figure out what it is because him and my brother are very mechanical. My dad's like in between, right? He's like the mechanical guy and he's the animal guy. Like he's got best of both worlds. My brother and I went opposite paths. Like my brother is all mechanics. He does very little with animals, and I'm all animals, public speaking, like that kind of stuff. I do very little with mechanics.
It's a perfect duo to take over a farm, right?
Right? Yeah.
One brother does animals, one does mechanics.
You find your niche. You find what you're comfortable with, what you like to do. I have a twin brother. Okay, I went all the way through to get a terminal degree, college, and all that stuff. My brother took one college class. I'm done, and he teaches inmates how to cut meat now. So, but he was all about butchering animals. I mean, he started that when he was like 14. Actually, before that, we actually started chickens and turkeys and poultry, which is gross. But that was his thing, and he was not, when he built his butcher shop, he knew how to weld, but he was like, I need you to come and weld some of this stuff up. So I would go and do that. And then, soldering pipe and things like that. It was out of his element. But I can cut a steak, but I can't butcher a cow.
Yeah.
Not that I really want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll eat it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'll be the taste tester, but no. But that was like the big thing. So like when I was in the play on Medeiros, he's like, "Yeah, you got only a few feet until you fall to your death." And I was like, "Thanks, that made me feel better. I was gonna sleep, but I can't now." And then he goes on to tell me like, "Yeah, you should be an ag mechanics teacher." I was like, "Medeiros, what makes you think I'm gonna trust anything you say now that you're telling me I'm gonna fall to my death?" But you.
I almost spit coffee.
But no, he was telling me like the usual, like, yeah, we need, there's a shortage of them, we need a lot of them. I was like, I understand that, but I don't want to be responsible for kids having to deal with heavy machinery when I can't even do it myself. And so we got into this whole conversation about it, and he was like, I think you'd be a great ag mech teacher. I was like, I think I'll be a great ag teacher. Anything but mech, I think I'll do fine with. But like that was like the big thing when even today, but that was a big thing when I was graduating. Is like you should go be an ag mech teacher. And I was like, I don't think so. And I talked to Roka about it, and he was like, don't do ag mech if you don't want to do ag mech. Like if you're not completely comfortable with it, that's not gonna be your thing.
So you haven't taken small engines yet.
Mm-mm.
You have that with me next semester?
I tried to get next semester. It was full, so it's the following semester.
Why don't you email me? Because I had space.
Oh. Well, no.
Not anymore, but...
Yeah. I didn't know. But I am taking welding next semester, so...
Well, that works out because you wouldn't have been able to take both anyways.
Yeah,
Oh.
the labs are at the same time. Or lecture. No.
Maybe
labs,
that's what it
I
was.
have a Friday lab on that one, so it wouldn't necessarily conflict. So is mechanics to you, is that like a no-go when you're teaching? Like if they're like, hey, we need you to teach this Ag Mech 1 class, or there's a job available and there's like one Ag Mech class, is that like I'm out, or is it I can maybe deal with it?
If it's intro, I could do intro. Okay. Like some of the more advanced stuff, I'm not sure I feel comfortable enough. Like just for the sake of, I don't want to be responsible for these kids getting bad education because I'm not qualified for it. It's not so much that I'd be like nervous about like handling the machinery. Like I could get over that for my job, but I want the kids to get the best education they could. And I feel like if it was an intro class, I could learn enough to be comfortable enough to teach an intro class. As I right now I feel like I could teach an intro animal science and plant science class pretty easily. So I want to be comfortable enough that I could teach intro wherever I go, no matter what the subject is. As we started getting into like the more advanced stuff, if I had more practice and more experience, like maybe after the welding and small engines classes, I'll feel more comfortable with that kind of stuff. But right now, that might be something I'd have to say, like, you know what, I appreciate the offer, but you might want to find someone more qualified for that.
For me, floral was that thing.
Yeah.
Like I had no desire to teach a floral class. I would have taught like pretty much anything else, but a floral class, no.
Yeah.
I taught an OH class. I loved it. I loved the OH class. The OH class was fun. I was going to teach a chemistry class potentially, or an ag government econ class potentially, and I would have done that.
Yeah.
But floral, no.
Yeah.
I'm out.
Floral.
Yeah, but for me, but like that. That's what I'm saying. For me,
I would hate ag bio. I could not.
For me, I did teach.
See, and
ag
I would
bio.
love to teach ag bio. That'd be like my dream right there.
I didn't love teaching ag bio, but
Meiosis
you know.
mitosis.
But everybody's got their little things, and everybody's got their like, no, I won't do this, or I don't really want to, but I'm willing. You know, like I'm willing to do those things,
Right.
and you know.
And I think a big thing with it too is like you're able to have a respect for that thing even if you couldn't teach it yourself. Like, you know, growing up watching my dad and my brother, like I have full respect for ag mech. I think it's if you can do that, props to you. I just can't.
You can, you just choose not to.
You can, you just don't. You don't have that desire and and that passion and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I like that econ, except for I taught one year. I taught it was during an election, and so we actually no longer did econ. It was all about government because I like talking about government.
Didn't you teach your econ kids that as supply goes up, so does demand?
No. I talk about prices. And I got mixed up.
Think about it.
And I had a couple sodas, and you guys won't freaking let me down or let me off of that.
One time he was teaching
then
econ, and he literally told us, "Hey, as supply goes up, so does demand." I'm like, "No, I think you got that wrong. I think you got that wrong, John." He's like, "I teach econ. I know." I'm like, "I sure hope that."
That's not what I said.
That's why he just taught
It was
government.
about prices and supply and demand or whatever. And not an engineer, an insurance agent was like, "No, you're wrong." And I'm like, you sell insurance. You know, what kind of business really is that? You call, hey, do you want insurance? You need it. Yeah, okay.
Oh my god. You okay there?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay.
He goes to do a 20-minute rant about insurance. Do you know who I am?
Man.
Oh man. Well.
Yeah.
Kind of got awkward now.
It did. Yeah, you kind of went off. We're a little bit nervous. We don't know. where do we step now?
Yeah.
I need to drink my coffee.
Don't spit it out.
Yeah, not on the equipment.
I do spit it out. It's going to go all over you.
No.
Oh man.
So, the reason you are minoring in MCJ is just to increase your, ability to do podcasts and things like that. Or do you think it would overtake your career and make you not want to teach?
On my way to, on my path through college, I've kind of gone back and forth for a while. Like when I was at COS, so cause I was a transfer from COS. I don't know if I mentioned that. While I was still at COS, I heavily considered just switching straight to AgCom and just doing that because I really enjoyed doing the podcast. At that time, I was helping out Adventures with their video series. I was like, maybe I can do education stuff just like as a outside of the classroom type career. And the more I got into it, the more I realized that I really like the curriculum side of things. I like designing lesson plans. I like going into the actual like classroom, interaction type stuff. I'm
gonna cut you off right there. He just said he liked doing lesson plans.
Yes, yeah, I heard that.
I do. I can show you the one I'm working on right now.
No, I don't want to. Continue on. Sorry.
Well, so I started working on this curriculum that I had this idea for a class I wanted to start. I actually talked to Roka about starting it here, and he said that if I decided to do my master's, I could teach that as my master's project, which would be really cool if I get to do that. But I realized that I like the classroom too much to not teach in it, at least for a little while. I want to at least give it a chance. I've been going back and forth if I want to stick to just high school, if I want to teach on the college level. Which you guys know, Charlie Aby over at COS. He was my teacher over there. I went and talked to him for a little while about it. He's actually one of the ones that told me about your podcast in the first place. He's like, have you heard of this podcast? I was like, no. But I talked to him a little bit about it, and he kind of told me, like, hey, you should think about going to high school for a little bit and then going to college, kind of seeing what your options are. So I've been kind of all over the place. Right now, my plan is to teach high school for a little while, maybe go into college, but do educational projects on the side. Whether it be the podcast or like some other outside of the classroom type experience stuff. Video series type stuff, or working with some of those nonprofits like Ag in the Classroom is a classroom-based one, but Teach Ag, or like some of those other like educational-based ones that are focused on like outreach and advocacy, and as opposed to the curriculum kind of stuff. Because I like all of it, but I don't know which direction I want to like stick to forever. So I'm at like a crossroads right now.
Kind of feel it out and see.
Yeah.
I mean, you could do a podcast still and teach, and you can kind of manage some of those things. You can even, like I could see you like teaching and then incorporating some of that stuff into your teaching, and maybe even utilizing classes to kind of, get some of that stuff there.
Create an AgCom class.
Right, yeah.
Like the state would adopt.
Yeah.
Thing, that would be really good.
I mean, if you like writing lesson plans, what about curriculum? You know what I mean? Yeah. Like that's kind of like the next level, right? Because lesson plans are very now and immediate, but curriculum is like, it's like the whole thing,
right?
And so
that's
developing some of those things to where there's competitions even, or different things, like utilizing some of those. Maybe we have like a podcast competition or something.
Ooh, that'd be cool.
I don't know. I'm just spitballing here.
Yeah.
I don't want to write anything up on that. So,
I mean, that would be something. I mean, when I was still in high school, like my first idea as an ag teacher, when I was like, I'm going to be an ag teacher, I wanted to teach some kind of like ag public speaking or like ag communication style class in like more of like the leadership sense. But as I've gotten more into like the podcasting side of things, I have thought about the possibility of having some kind of like ag advocacy almost style class that's focused more on reaching out to the public as opposed to just going back and teaching more students, which teaching students is great, but there's a lot of people focusing on teaching students. There's not a lot of people focusing on teaching everyone else.
Well, so you were talking earlier about all the other podcasts
right.
that are ag education, and I kind of thought earlier, I didn't say it, but I kind of thought that you wanted to create like a global network, so you can just utilize your students to have them create different podcasts.
There you go.
Then you can then
his students could win ag ed proficiency every year.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like the state.
So you help them set up their own podcast, but then you're like the owner of this global network of all these.
That could work.
This is your direction. This is your direction. And
when I started working with some of the other ag podcasters, because we did some side. Some side projects. We were going to do some crossovers. It hadn't quite happened yet, but I did do some work with some other ag ed podcasters, and we talked about starting like a little like ag ed coalition in the podcasting community, like a little like you guys are focusing on teaching elementary school, you guys are focusing on high school, I'm focusing on the general public. Like we all have like different divisions of education. Just kind of like working together on like something similar to like a network of that sort. That could be a cool project for high school students to kind of take under their wing. There are a lot of FA chapters that are kind of working on developing podcasts. I actually started helping Hanford develop their podcast. Mr. Ferrer over there reached out to me. He was like, "Hey, can you help my historian? She wants to start a podcast for the chapter. Would you be able to help her?" So I sat down with her, gave her like the basics of what she needs to start it, and kind of what to expect going into it and that kind of stuff. So the potential's there. I just kind of need to work out the kinks and then propose it. Once I start teaching.
No. See, I told you, a little global network. You know?
He's gonna create this and he's gonna forget. Oh, the safety glass required. They're not a part of that.
No, I've been keeping the list of all the people who give me ideas. I already freaking Dave Catano already told me when I become famous, I have to let everyone know that he was the one that started it all. But
you don't have to.
Oh man.
But no, I mean, there's cool stuff out there. I need to kind of focus in right now and get my stuff done so I can get started
you know,
on it.
and some people don't realize that it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
You know, it is, you know, to kind of, you know, come up with stuff, to create content, to, you know, that people are going to want to listen to.
Right.
And, you know, and then the editing process. People don't understand that, you know. The conversation that we're having right now may or may not be in its entire length, you know.
Right.
Like we just did one the other day, and we had like a break. Somebody came in, and you know, we edited it, and I was telling Johnny, I was like, oh, this is so seamless, like, you know, like people aren't going to tell that there was actually a break there because like
until
you can edit it.
And then the break just
until it doesn't record the whole thing.
No.
How are they gonna know? There's only like 20 minutes missing.
I talk a lot of crap, but Chris is, you know, I call him the executive producer. Is that right?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. He actually really runs it. I just talk.
I mean, that's the magic of podcasting. Like with a video, you could tell where the cuts are because you see it, but with a podcast, nobody has to know.
Yeah.
I just edited a teaser for my new season coming out. I posted it yesterday, and I put a bunch of.
I tell you, he's more advanced than we are.
Not necessarily.
We're just ongoing.
But for my new season, I have I'm bringing back all of my favorite guests from older episodes, and I'm doing kind of like a mini segment in there that are like the what ifs, like conversations that I've had that could have been episodes that never were. I'm bringing guests that from those conversations on. So like, you know, this is an example of one of those, and like I want to have Roka on there because he's been begging me to be on it for forever. He won't admit it, but
that's kind of funny. Roka's been begging me to be on. Sorry, Roka, you're not cool enough. You know what? You know what that means? We're cooler than Roka.
No, he hasn't said it, but he's been bringing it up enough that I can tell. So I offered him. He was like, yeah, sure, whatever. But you know that means like, yes.
So when are you gonna have me on your podcast?
I'm free Friday.
But no, just having like a mini series of they haven't been guests before, but they would have been on that list anyway if they would have been guests kind of thing. So I spliced together a bunch of like clips from the episodes I've recorded so far, and like did like a little like radio sound effect of like tuning in between channels. So it's like one episode you tune to another episode, and you tune to another episode kind of thing.
Nice.
And like I had to clip it down to make it. Sound like, because I'm taking sound bites from episodes, but they're not like from the same part of that episode. I'm taking like 3 different parts and splicing them together, and like making it sound like it was all one coherent sentence is really hard. But when you do it right, it sounds really cool, and you're like, man, like you gotta high five yourself because you actually did something good.
Yeah.
Podcast magic.
Yeah. All that stuff just went over Johnny's head. He's like, what? I think I have enough content now that I could probably make Johnny say anything that I want. Because all you need is just the word. I just need you to say the word. And every time you say a word, I can take that word.
Happen. He's like, you said you would do this. No, I didn't. And he's like, look,
and
hit play. It was in the podcast.
And then he's going to be like, damn it, I did say it.
No, that's the other thing I learned is like the scary part of audio editing. You're like, man, I can make anyone that's been on my show say anything I want. Like,
what was that one news anchor? Oh my gosh, that they had that song that they made him sing. Oh,
Brian.
Yeah. On NBC, Brian Williams. Yeah. And what was the song that they made him? You've seen that video? I'm
yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that right there is a prime example of what you can do with editing.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, that one like original like rap song.
Right.
One of the first rap songs. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's funny.
No. That's all cool. Do you have any questions for us? Any more questions for us?
I mean, not that I think off the top of my head. I mean, thanks for having me on. I mean, it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Any questions for him?
I think I've asked everything that I wanted to. There was one thing though, Johnny, that you said before we started recording, and you said you were going to bring it up about this.
Had a moment.
I'm kind of. This is your moment because I am bringing you into this because.
What do we got?
Okay, so when we first started, I was like, hey, we're going to keep this granola. And you're like, what? I mean, organic? I'm like, yeah, organic.
So granola, like a granola bar.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Get the right letters in there. It's the wrong order.
it's the more... I don't know how to
Maybe
say
he was
this.
thinking of an organic
No,
granola
I'm
bar.
trying to-
Yeah, that could be.
I'm trying to phrase this to where it doesn't come off like bad. Typically, and I am not a judgmental person, but
It's a great way to start a sentence.
people who tend to be a little more earthy, that like organic food and you know hybrids and things like that.
When you say you're not a judgmental person before you're about to say something, that's like saying I'm not racist, but you kind of know something racist is probably going to come out.
Granola is just a phrase I put that general group of. They're very granola, and I got.
So you're saying like hippies and stuff like that? Okay.
Yeah. You know, and so I got mixed up between that and organic at the end of the semester. Yeah.
People have enough labels to worry about. You don't have to have people going in there like, hey, these granola carrots. Like,
Yeah.
Are they going to go to those stores and be like, I only buy granola foods? People are going to be like, what are you talking? And then somebody's going to make a label and you're going to have a whole new issue. Like, see what you done?
Yeah. It's a good thing he's not an influencer.
I
That's
influence
awesome.
students' minds to learn and make their own decisions. That's what I influence.
Yes, I like that.
Cool.
Teachers are the good kind of influencers, usually.
Hopefully.
That's the goal.
Hopefully.
But
Well, cool. Well, thanks for being on.
yeah.
And I'm glad I met you. I've seen you, but never actually met you. And
Yeah.
so Chris was really excited. Hey, we got a real podcaster. I was like, okay, well, we're gonna look bad during this whole thing, but okay, let's put him on. You know. So.
Nah, from what I can tell, you guys are a bit more advanced than I am in terms of equipment. I just have more experience, and what that really means is I've made more mistakes than you have, so I've been able to fix them a lot faster.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, mistakes happen all the time. But
So.
cool.
Well, if anyone has any questions, or Chris will actually put Brendan's podcast link up.
Yeah. Yeah, I will
Yeah.
put
so
that
you
in
have
the
access to
description
it.
notes
And then
there.
If you have any questions, reach out, text, email, whatever.
Yep.
We'll talk to you later.
All right. Thank you.
So there you have it. That is the first episode back after our long hiatus. So I hope you all enjoyed it. And again, once again, go ahead and check out Safety Glasses Required. I'll link it all down in the description so you guys can go hear it and show Mr. McKenna and Mr. Williams, actually Dr. Williams, some well-deserved attention. Right now, I am currently at the FIRA conference, and I will be posting all kinds of content about that. Next week, I will post a full video / episode about the conference and how it went and some of the great innovations and some clips from the different panels I was able to watch. So have an eye out for that. But once again, thank you so much for listening. Go check out Safety Glasses Required and show them some love. And I'll catch you all next week. And don't forget, if you ate today, thank a farmer.